an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Red Rising Book 3, Morning Star, chapters 39 through 42. The Heart, Yellow Sea, The Moon Lord, The Poet. Oh, you guys, this is so grim. I am really, proud of our team for coming up with this plan. It's a great idea. It's done really well. But the sadness of everything to do with Roke just overwhelms it. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Ashley for both commissioning this episode and being flexible. I wound up having some really bizarre computer issues on Tuesday, and I had to push everything back because it was taking so long for all of my files to finalize. But thankfully, I happened to have an open slot during the middle of the day today, so I was able to just postpone this episode. So it actually worked out quite tidily, which is rare. But thank you, Ashley, for allowing me to do that. My computer, I think I figured out what the problem was, and I think we're good. And on another note, if you guys hear some strange sounds in the background, that is my kitten, Pipsqueak, who is crawling all over me. She has a tendency to try and claw my legs from under my desk if she's on the floor while I record, so I'm keeping her up here because it's less painful, ultimately. But I may have to put her down anyway. We'll see. So these are, you guys, these chapters had to hold me for so long because there was such a large gap, between now and the previous episode. I think it was almost a month. And it is it's the kind of scene that it's a very unsatisfying spot to have to stop for such a long time because while our friends do secure a victory of a sort, it comes at a cost that I didn't quite realize was as devastating as to me as it is. I kind of underestimated, I think, the overall reaction that I had as a reader to Roke and the falling out between him and Darrow. And I was just taken aback by how saddened I was at the way this goes. So, all right. Chapter 39, The Heart. Dancer, he's talking to Dancer, and I'm trying to find the spot here. Because there's a couple of things that I explicitly want to quote. But, I love when he's talking to Dancer and Dancer calls him a good man and he says, yeah, then why do I want to do bad things? And I was wanting and doing aren't necessarily the same thing. I can understand, though, feeling like the urge proves that you're not as great as people think. The fact that you have to keep yourself from doing something. And then he goes and he interrupts without intending to his mother and Mustang, who are talking. And there's just a sort of intensity. And when he says, what's going on, Mustang says, just saying goodbye. But I don't know if that's it. My mother steps close to me. Dio brought me this from Lycos. She opens a little plastic box and shows me the dirt inside. My little mother smiles up at me. You fly in tonight, and when all grows dark, remember who you are. Remember you are never alone. The hopes and dreams of our people go with you. Remember home. Remember you are loved. And follows up with, I know you don't think you deserve to be happy, but you do. What you need to do, you do what you need to do, then come home to me, then start living. And he walks away asking Mustang, what was that about? Mustang looks at me as if I should know. She's afraid. Why? she's your mother. Darrow, the fact that you genuinely are like, what is she worried about? Sir, after everything, she like literally thought she had buried you at one point. I am going to need you to like use your critical thinking skills a little bit more here on this sort of thing, man. I feel like all your brain power is going into war related shit, and maybe you need to learn some interpersonal relations. I don't know. So the yellow sea of Io rolls in around my black boots. Great dunes of sulfur-laced sand with razorback ridges of silicate rock as far as the eye can see. I am so curious how much of the description of these planets is based on what the author has discovered in research about the makeup of the planets themselves. I don't want to make it sound like it has to be based on real research. It absolutely does not. It's fine. But I am curious if that played into it at all, or if he just decided, terraforming is a thing, so I can just make the place whatever I feel like, you know. But I have to assume that like the gravity aspect is something that's based on real shit, but even that, who knows? So he is down here and he is waiting, as we find out, to meet with the leader of this planet, who is somebody who has a real reputation for being a person of consequence, is the way that I want to say this. Somebody that everyone seems to fall in line around and admire. So I'm going to read this little description of how this works here. Huge stains of concentric green freckle her equatorial regions. Finding crops and animals difficult to cultivate so far from the sun, the Society Engineering Corps covered millions of acres of Io's surface with pulse fields, imported dirt and water for 3 lifetimes on Cosmo haulers, thickened the planet's atmosphere to filter Jupiter's massive radiation, and used the planet's interior tidal heating to power great generators to grow foodstuffs for the entire Jupiter orbit and exportation to the core, and more important, the rim. She's a farm deck with the biggest breadbasket between Mars and Uranus, with easy gravity and cheap land. Guess who did all the labor? I'll bet they did. And he's just describes how these people are made differently to live here. They are harder, lither, eyes slightly larger to absorb the dimmed light 600 million kilometers from the sun, skin paler, taller, able to withstand higher doses of radiation. These people believe themselves most like the Iron Golds who conquered Earth and put man at peace for the first time in her history. I shouldn't have worn black today. My gloves, my cloak, my jacket underneath. I thought we were going to the anti-Jupiter side of Io, where sulfur dioxide snowfields crust the planet. But the Moon Lord's operation team demanded a new meeting point at the last moment, setting us on the edge of the Sulfur Sea. Temperature 120 degrees Celsius. Let me go ahead and, like a real American, look up what Celsius is to Fahrenheit. So that would be 248 degrees. My. So as soon as it's mentioned that like they last second asked us to meet somewhere else, I got kind of worried that this was a trap. And it turns out it is a trap in a way, based on what we find out later, but it's not the kind of trap that I was expecting. So he has a little like chat here with Sephi, who is just basically asking, why would people live here? And he says, we live everywhere we can. And she says, but golds choose. Right? And he's like, yeah. And she says, yeah, I'd be wary of men who choose such a home. The spirits here are cruel. And I really like that idea of just like, if they are willing to make their lives here, these people are probably pretty tough badasses. Just watch your back. That's all I'm saying. So this fucking Severo's, he's really sort of acting up a lot more here than he had been. It's funny I say that because like we literally had a fist fight because he was acting up so bad. But what I mean is he's acting up while while subordinate to Darrow here in a way that we haven't seen in a minute. And the first like instance of this is Mustang having to like bring this person they're supposed to meet, and it turns out that she's actually with his sister. And where is it? Why would I need air support when I've got you? I say, gesturing to Severo's grav boots. Mustang said they'll be here, I say. Mustang said they'll be here, Severo mocks in childish voice. They better. Fleet can't squat for long out there without being spotted. And later on, he actually like fist bumps her and is like, hey, we're in this together. And I was like, wow, are they friends now? Is this... She seems very gratified by that. So Pebble tells him we've got 3 ships inbound, and they appear and land before them. They wear krill, organic breathing masks made by carvers over nose and mouths. And these people are dressed in the type of equipment that will go unseen on thermal vision. Assassins. Holiday recognizes the different breed of danger. She's not with them. Any Telemonuses? No, I say. Hold, I see her. Darrow, sorry we're late. Where's Romulus? He's not coming. Bullshit, Severo hisses. I told you, Reap. Severo, it's fine. This is his sister, Vila. And he's like, okay, are you speaking for your brother? And she's like, lol. Yeah, no, nobody does that. And she tells him, we want you to come to his house. To which Severo, how about you tell your bitch of a brother to honor his bloody damn agreement before I take that rifle and shove it so far up your fart hole you look like a skinny pixie shish kebab. Severo, my guy, why are you like this? Can you just, for a second, be cool? Like, just a little? No. Nope. Can't. So, he introduces her to Sephi. She is very wary of Sephi, who is circling her while she speaks. And I love Darrow being like, I love the way that people talk when she's circling them. They just, I don't know, they sound like they're being more honest. And Vila basically is like, are you going to come or not? You have 60 seconds. And Mustang is like, look, Romulus is just not the type that would kill a guest. He's not going to do it. I get that you don't really have a reason to trust them, but from what I understand, it's just unlikely that they're pulling anything. And then he sort of stops and he's like, I don't know, man. I've been wrong before. And he asks Sephi, and she just says, go. And he takes that. I thought it was interesting. You know, like, there's been a couple mentions of the fact that Sephi is just a very different animal to her brother. And yet, he puts a faith in her word and her judgment that I think a lot of people might argue she hasn't really earned yet. But I am so okay with him doing this that I can't help but think that it may be a bad idea. Like, how automatically I assumed that he could trust her as much as Ragnar. I'm like, am I being played too? Is that the point? I don't know. But anyway, so 41, the Moon Lord. The home of the most powerful man in the Galilean moons is a simple wandering place of little gardens and quiet nooks. Set in the shadow of a dormant volcano, it looks out over a yellow plain that stretches to the horizon where another volcano smolders and magma creeps westward. And that just sounds so cool. Like, the idea of, because, anytime that you see some shit where somebody has, is living near a volcano, it's always some supervillain type shit, It's always like the drama of the volcano has been harnessed for decor, basically. And I love the idea of, we have the view of a volcano and we're in the shadow of a dormant one, but our place just looks like a really, nice bungalow with some gardens and a fire pit. We've got bocce. I don't know. I just like that idea. Because what I'm picturing here is a family home. The kind of place that's got toys scattered around, activities because people live here, just the kind of spot that, this is the house that when they have a big summer blowout party, you want to be invited to their party because they always have the best one. So there's this moment here where he is dropping off his boots at the beginning of the, once they get to the house, they're meant to take their shoes off. And him and Mustang exchange an expression here that I didn't get. And then later on, we find out that this is the moment they both realize somebody else is here because the boots that are left are of a type that are meant for space, not for being on this planet. So it gives away that he has somebody from outside visiting also. Before we even get there, though, he is walking through this little tangerine farm area, and there's a little girl there that's like, you can have one. Dad won't mind. And she recognizes him. She says, "You're the Martian, aren't you?" "My name is Darrow. What's yours?" "I am Sarah Au-Ra. Were you really a Red? I heard my father speaking. They think just because I don't have this," she runs a finger along her cheek in an imaginary scar, "that I don't have ears. Sometimes I climb." "I still am a Red," I say. "It's not something I stopped being." "Oh, you don't look like one." "Maybe it's not about what I look like," I suggest. "Maybe it's about what I do." Is that too clever a thing to say to a 6-year-old? Hell if I know. She makes a disgusted face, and I fear I've made a mistake. I think she makes this disgusted face because he has just repeated something to her that he has said, that her father has said a bunch of times. Because he says something later on to Roke that's very similar to this. So I think that the reaction he gets, he takes the wrong way. It's simply a child who is sick of hearing the same thing, and yet hears another adult just repeating this, what to her has become sort of a meaningless sentence. And I wonder if that played any role in anything with Romulus. I don't think so, because he's less a man of emotion than I want him to be, but just sort of caught my fancy. And she says, "I haven't earned servants, not yet. It darkens my mood to think of this girl running for her life through the woods of the Institute. Or will she be the one chasing?" I really appreciated that he has that thought, because he's just assuming she's going to be a victim in whatever the scenario is, and not necessarily, my guy. So here comes her father. Romulus Au-Ra leans against the doorframe of his home. He is a serene and violent man. My height, yet thinner, with a twice-broken nose. His right eye, a third larger than mine, is set in a narrow, wrathful face. His left eyelid is crossed with a scar. A smooth globe of blue and black marble stares out at me in place of an eyeball. His full lips are pinched, the top lip bearing 3 more scars. His dark gold hair is long and held in a ponytail. Except for the old wounds, his skin is perfect porcelain. But it's how he seems more than how he looks. That makes the man. I feel his steady way, his easy confidence, as if he's always been at the door, always known me. It's startling how much I like him from the moment he winks at his daughter, and also how much I want him to like me, despite the tyrant I know him to be. And I just love that, because this is just, I really appreciate the indication of, like, I am aware of the shit he's done. And yet, because that is how it can be sometimes, if people have enough of a force of personality, even going in forewarned, they can still disarm you. And it's like, it can be very humbling to realize how easily you can be manipulated by somebody who's good at it, you know? Not to say that this man is even attempting to manipulate, although I assume that's part and parcel with his job, but he does seem like somebody for whom that comes so easily that he doesn't even have to try, mostly, because it's just part of the way he operates. I love Serafina calls him thick, which just felt like such a weird, specifically like modern slang thing for her to say. And when she says, like, he's bigger than you, Darrow says, not as large as a Telemanus. And she's like, well, nothing is. And he says, no, yeah, there is. My friend Ragnar was almost as big to me as I am to you. And she's like, wow, what happened to him? And he says, well, she died. And she says, I'm sorry. Is that why you looked so sad? I flinch, not knowing it was so obvious. Romulus notices and spares me from answering. There was something about the fact that he had, like, there's some compassion there. It's not necessarily sensitivity, but the fact that he sees, like, this guy is in pain and we really don't need to be, like, dealing with things on that level. I'm just going to give him an out. I don't know. It's a small thing, but I just appreciated it. But it could also be for just the simple, the practicality of, like, let's stay on task, because that's an emotional thing and we don't need to get tied up in that and I don't want to hear it. It could be that as well. And I'm assigning it a different motive, but I don't know. I like to think that he does have compassion, and he simply keeps that from letting it, like, from swaying him during other types of situations. And when he can afford to, he indulges it a little bit. So they sit for a bit while he peels this tangerine, which eventually, the way that it's described by Darrow is like, now it seems more like a scalping, and he tears it gruesomely apart is the way it's described. And I just loved that the energy that I'm getting from this is the scene where Tywin Lannister is skinning that deer while he's talking to Jaime and reprimanding him. I think it's Jaime. It might be Tyrion. And the savagery of what he's doing while he's talking to him is so, like, distracting and intense. I like that we're going to have that same effect here, but it's with a piece of fruit, which is on its surface much less threatening. There's no knife involved. There's no blood involved. And yet the brutality of what he's doing still comes across and is intimidating somehow, which I feel like means you're even more intimidating than Tywin. So at this point, when they have this little connection, Darrow's, saying some things about how, like, we really put a lot of work into terraforming this planet. I don't know if it was worth it. And he does this big speech about, taming nature and blah, blah, blah. And Darrow says, or maybe we're just passing through. He wags a finger at me. You've never been credited for being wise. Not wise, I correct. I've been humbled, and it's a sobering thing. The box was real, Romulus asks. We've heard rumors this last month. It was real. Indecorous, he says in contempt. But it speaks to the quality of your enemy. I love indecorous as the damning insult that he throws out there. Nothing about, like, that's inhuman. that's beyond the pale in terms of like sheer cruelty. It's just unbecoming. Don't do it because it like just looks bad, you know? And when they talk a little bit further, he says, we don't have servants, and there are servants, my child doesn't have one. I don't need them seeing you today. And they aren't hers, referring to his daughter. What kind of parent would want their child to have servants? The moment a child thinks it's entitled to anything, they think they deserve everything. Which, I actually can kind of understand how that would happen, remembering what I was like as a child. I don't like the accusations of younger generations being more or less entitled than others, because I think that sort of thing is really like, it's so impossible to gauge with any sort of objectivity. However, I do think that children accept things as their due much more readily when they're younger, because they're learning what the norms are. And so they will adjust their expectations very, very quickly based on what you are showing them they can expect. And he's talking about the Institute as being barbaric and says, violence is a tool. It is meant to shock, to change. Instead, they normalize and celebrate it and create a culture of exploitation where they are so entitled to sex and power that when they are told no, they pull a sword and do as they like. Just as they've done to your people, I say. Just as they've done to my people, he repeats. Just as we do to yours. I won't romanticize what I am or excuse the subjugation of your people. What we do to them is cruel, but it is necessary. And Darrow says, you think you're more civilized than Luna, but you're just more disciplined. And he's like, isn't that what civilization is, though? Denying what your instincts tell you for the sake of, like, you know, your long-term goals. And Darrow says, no, it's not. But I'm not here to debate philosophy or politics. I'm here to discuss war. May I ask you a question of personal note? If you must. You are aware my father and daughter died at your triumph on Mars. I am. In a way, that's what began all this. Did you see it happen? I did. Was it as they say? I wouldn't presume to know what they are or who they are or what they say. They say Antonia au Severus Julii stepped on my daughter's skull till it caved in. My wife and I wish to know if it is true. It's what we were told by one of the few who managed to escape. Yes, it is true. Did she suffer? She suffered for several minutes. Did she weep? Yes, but she did not beg. Truth can be cruel, yet it is the only thing of value. I thank you for it, and I have a truth of my own, one I do not think you will like. And this is when Darrow's like, yeah, you've got other people here, huh? And he says, look, the reality is, you want us to fight the core, and they are big and bad and intimidating. And having you here means that I could potentially use you as a bargaining chip. I gotta figure out what I want to do. Do I want to follow you here or hand you over and leverage this? And Darrow says, so who did the sovereign send? And he says, who do you think? And chapter 42, the poet, Roque au Fabii, sits at a stone table in an orchard along the side of the house, finishing a dessert of elderberry cheesecake and coffee. First of all, yum. Second of all, oh, Roque. You guys, I am so... I pretty much what I said in my intro, how affected I am by Roque bums me out. I just didn't think I cared this much. I felt like I had sort of succeeded in mentally writing him off. And then when I get to these moments, the feeling of like desperately wanting him to forgive Darrow, and then sort of being angry at that being the way I even think of it, because I don't feel like he's the person to forgive anything. And yet he's acting as if he's the arbiter of Darrow's actions somehow. I don't know, but it's similar to the feeling that I have with Cassius, except with Cassius, it's like, because there is something so specific that happened between the two of them so early that was like determined by the school, and all of that was something that was, you shouldn't be blaming Darrow for. I was able to just be more angry with Cassius at the way he was acting as if Darrow had a choice, that he should have just laid down and died and let Cassius' brother kill him. Like that was the only option other than killing him himself. With the way that things happened with Quinn, it's a much more open sort of situation where any number of factors could have played into making things go a different way. And so Roque blaming Darrow, it still doesn't make sense to me. And it's still really disrespectful to Quinn, in my opinion. But it's harder for me to just be like, oh my God, get over yourself, than it is with Cassius. And I really think that it's like a brilliant thing that this author did in the structuring of this series, to have this thing at the school that is so intense, life or death, with all of these characters, so that we have memories of what it was like when all of us worked together. As readers, we have memories of when these people were our friends, were Darrow's friends, people that had his back no matter what and just always showed up for him. And so when we transition to the next part in the story and they have turned their backs on him the way they have, it's just this real sense of history between all of them that infuses the scenes they have later on with so much more baggage and so much more meaning behind all of the words, you know? And it just really adds this emotional edge that I would have to assume is part of war, when you are fighting in and amongst people that you have known. This is going to be a lot of like the kind of bullshit you have to wade through. And I just think it adds so much dimension to the story. And it's the sort of thing that I think probably when people look at history with the macro lens, we think of like, well, people did certain things historically that were like catalysts for various events because of the facts of the situation. And like, how many times is that true? How many times was it because so-and-so asked them and they had a history with so-and-so, and so they did them a favor, and it wasn't about facts. It was pure emotion that I owe this person a favor, that they saved my life once and I feel like I have an obligation. You know, how much history do we take as being based on logic and wasn't even a little bit? Sorry guys if you can hear that. The kitten is here and I'm just holding her on my chest. So he greets him, Darrow, it's been an age, by his first name. Roque he calls Imperator Fabii. There's not a hint of sorrow on his face. I want there to be. And knowing that, I know I still feel for the man. Yeah, the fact that you're just like, I was hoping to see some regret here. Darrow is nothing if not always like wishing everyone around him regretted things as much as he does. The Mustang asked me about him on the journey, and I told her he was nothing to me, but we both know that isn't true. Without her, I could face my enemies, but I would not hold on to so much of myself. I would be darker, more wrathful. I count my blessings that I have people like her to which I can tether my spirit. Otherwise, I fear it would run away from me. What a beautiful line. Not that his spirit would, be taken away, that it would run. That you would do something to which your own self is in conflict to the degree that it would just depart. That's just so evocative. I love that line so much. So this, he talks to Romulus. He calls him by his first name, which eventually Romulus is like, hey, you know what? You don't get to do that anymore. But that's later. And the fact that he calls him by his first name repeatedly just felt like so much posturing. And I love, he's striking in his black and gold uniform, lean like a strand of golden summer wheat, with high cheekbones and warm eyes. But his face is distant and unyielding. By now he could drape a dozen battle glories across his chest. But his vanity is so deep that he thinks affectation a sign of boorish decadence. I love that instead of it being he has no vanity and so he doesn't feel the need to do that, it's his vanity is so profound that he turns an entire other corner about the way that he is going to handle this stuff. And I keep picturing at this point Tom Hiddleston for Roke. And he's too old for it, but that's who I'm picturing. So, sorry guys, this kitten. Roke watches me. It does please me, Darrow, knowing you're finally participating in the war you began. Darrow isn't responsible for this war, Mustang says. Your sovereign is. For instilling order? For obeying the compact? Oh, that's fresh. I know her a bit better than you, poet. The crone is a nasty, covetous creature. Do you think it was Aja's idea to kill Quinn? It was Octavia's. She told her to do it through the comm in her ear. Quinn died because of Darrow, Roke says. No one else. The jackal bragged to me that he killed Quinn, I say. Did you know that? If he'd let her be, she would have lived. He killed her in the back of the ship while the rest of us fought for our lives. Liar. I shake my head. Sorry, but that guilt you feel in your skinny little gut, that's gonna stick around, because it's the truth. I had completely forgotten the jackal said that to him. Straight up. I don't even remember when that was mentioned. So I am very glad that the author reminded me of it, because truly, if one of you in the chat had told me this, I would have been like, wait, really? I'm so sorry, you guys. She is just very antsy right now. But yeah, the fact that he's blaming Darrow after not only hearing about the jackal, which the fact that he's calling Darrow a liar about this is truly funny to me. There is no reason to think Darrow is lying about this. The only thing Darrow has ever lied about is being a Red. And otherwise, other than that, who he is and what he has been attempting to, do, I feel like has been, even if the overall objective was hidden, he has been very much himself since day one. And is still himself the way that you used to know him. So Roke is trying to pretend that what happened with Quinn now means that Darrow is an entirely different person, and he calls him a liar later. To Romulus, he's like, Darrow is a liar. And I just was like, dude, that is just not correct. There is a difference between somebody who is undercover and doing shit and somebody who is a liar. And Roke it just feels like is failing utterly to cope with his emotions, and he's turning it into this whole thing. And I really appreciate that at one point he says to Mustang, he's using your heart against you. And she says, don't talk down to me, poet. You're the weeping sort here, not me. This isn't about love. This is about what is right. That has nothing to do with emotion. It has to do with justice, which rests upon facts. They know I believe in Rim independence. They know I'm a reformer, and they know I'm intelligent enough not to conflate the two or confuse my emotions with my beliefs, unlike you. So since your rhetorical plays here are going to fall on deaf ears, shall we spare ourselves the indignity of verbal jousting and make a proposition so we can end this war one way or another? Romulus smiles slightly. Do you have anything to add, Darrow? I believe Mustang covered it quite thoroughly. You guys, this was everything. I loved this so much. Because it's true, like, he's trying to act like, oh, he's manipulating you because you're in love with him. It's yet another instance of Roke actually being kind of misogynistic, because he is, one, assuming that he knows what's going on between the two of them and knows her heart and the way that she operates. And he should know, but he's treating her like she's some sort of child. And then there's the fact that he has been... When I say that he's being disrespectful to Quinn based on the way he's reacting to her death, what I've meant by that is that he is treating everything that happened to Quinn as if her choices didn't matter at all. Quinn chose to be a Howler, and she chose to show up for Darrow at this place and do this thing because she wanted to be a part of it. And Roke has entirely set aside any choices that she made. And I think that he's, like, in his head, the way he's sort of rationalizing this is that she did all of that under false pretenses, thinking that she was doing it for a certain person that didn't actually exist. And that if she had known who Darrow really was, she would have made a different choice. But I'm not even sure I believe that. I don't know. I feel like Quinn would have been like Team Darrow if it were revealed, you know, I think to this day that she would still be with Darrow. And I think that Roke fundamentally misunderstands like who she is as a person, and that it would have come between them that she was willing to stay a Howler and stay working with Darrow, when to Roke it would be unthinkable. Sorry, guys, I just had to drop the kitten off my desk because she is just unruly. But yeah, so this is like, there has been some discussion in the Discord. I'm trying to remember. I think it might be Droll, but there is somebody who has been sharing their feelings that there is like a misogynist streak in these books, and trying to sort out whether that is like purposeful within the world itself and something that the writer is aware of and acknowledging and developing on purpose, or whether it is a streak that betrays the thought of the writer. And honestly, I don't feel like I'm far enough along to really have a good sense of that yet. I feel like I want to give the benefit of the doubt that it is in world and being developed on purpose. But the thing that I keep sort of coming up against the difficulty is that there are, it's not even fair to say, like, I don't want to say that there are no women characters, because that's not true at all. But they definitely feel in the minority, and they feel like there is a sort of limitation to them. And again, that may be because of the world. That may be just to point out the fact that these people are still making a lot of the same mistakes in the way that they have decided who is capable of making decisions and leading mankind. I don't know. But I want to think that this whole thing with Roke is just meant to point out that he is misogynist and that he has this, like, actually kind of petulant, like, reaction to all of this that is deeply immature. And when faced with somebody like Mustang, truly cannot conceive of the fact that she isn't being manipulated by anybody. She knows exactly what she's doing. And the assumption that she could be played like that is deeply insulting. And he is just so, like, up his own ass. And it's funny because, you know, I had thought maybe Roke, being somebody who was had such an emphasis on philosophy, that he would be somebody who could understand what Darrow was attempting to do and the injustice of the situation with the society. And I keep being like, it could have been, though. Like, it feels like the potential was right there. And he has decided to simply take it in another direction out of sheer stubborn pride over the fact that he was played by somebody who was a red. It's almost like he is so ashamed of how he didn't see it that he is attempting to, like, make up for all of the mistakes he feels he's made along the way, trusting Darrow, by going extra hard now. And that's just how I feel about it. And it feels really sad and pitiful to me, that it's almost like he's trying to cling as hard as he can to an image that at least is more powerful than the guy who was tricked, than the guy who got drugged at the feast and left on the ground by his friend. You know, like, there's just a whole lot of ego tied up in all of this. So Roke, he does his, because he, you know, he's meeting with the Moon Lords here, and the point is we're going to try and each convince them to take our side in things. And he does his whole song and dance about how we regret being in this conflict, yada, yada, yada. After the war, she will remove the societal garrison, but not from Jupiter, but not Saturn or Uranus. The Archgovernor of Titan snorts contemptuously. She will enter into talks in good faith regarding the reduction of taxes and rim export tariffs. She will grant you the same licenses for belt mining which core companies currently hold, and she will accept your proposal for equal representation in the Senate. And the reformation of the sovereign election process? Romulus asks. She was never meant to be an empress. She's an elected official. She will revise the election process after the new senators have been appointed. Additionally, the Olympic Knights will be appointed by vote of the archgovernors, not by order of the sovereign as you requested. And Mustang says, So she's saying, I'll do anything you want until I don't have to anymore. Come on, guys. I've seen the way that this goes. Romulus asks, would you give me Antonia, you know, so that we could punish her for killing my daughter and father? And he says yes. And Romulus is feeling this. And Darrow gets up and he says, I'm just going to offer you independence. That's it, straight up. No taxes, permanent independence from Luna, no 20 years of service to the core, no orders from Babylon the core has become. Roke calls this outlandish and says Darrow is only who he is because of who is around him. Agreed, Mustang says cheerily. I loved that moment so much. He really thinks that he's insulting Darrow. Anyone is only who they are because of the people around them when it comes to this sort of situation. That's just fucking how power works. Like, you know, I mean, it's just a silly thing to me. Acting as, like, the very fact that he has the people he has around him is an indicator of the kind of person he is, actually. If you have a great team, it's because you have good judgment in selecting your team. So that's not he really thought he ate. And he says, Darrow, you have the greatest dockyards the world has ever seen, but you started your war too quickly without enough ships or fuel, thinking the Sovereign would not be able to send a fleet here so quickly. You were wrong. But the Sovereign's made a mistake as well. All of her remaining fleets are in the core, defending moons and worlds against Orion. But Orion is not in the core. She is with me. Her forces joined to the ships I stole from the Jackal to form the armada with which I will smash the Sword Armada from the sky. You don't have the ships for that, Roke says. You don't know what I have, and you don't know where I hide it. And Romulus says, how many ships does he have to Mustang? And she just says, enough. Then Darrow says, Roke would have you believe I am a wildfire. Do I look wild? Romulus, you have no interest in the core, just as I have no interest in the Rim. This is not my home. We are not enemies. My war is not against your race, but against the rulers of my home. Help us shatter the Sword Armada, and you will have your independence, 2 birds with 1 stone. Even if I do not defeat the Sovereign in the core after we defeat the poet here, even if I lose within the year, we will cause such damage that it will be a lifetime before Octavia can summon the ships, the money, the men, the commanders to cross the 1 billion kilometers darkness again. And I don't want to just read this whole chapter. It's so incredibly dialogue heavy. But there's a lot of going back and forth with Roke, first of all, trying to imply that Darrow's saying he's going to cut his losses and he would never. And Darrow insisting, I know that even though it sucks I have to do that, in war you got to make sacrifices. And so, yeah, I will. And then Mustang explaining about how completely the Sovereign was ready to betray her by killing her entire family, despite promising that was not part of the deal here. Roke calls Darrow a terrorist and a turncloak. How can you trust him? How could you think a red cares more for you than a gold? And he makes this speech about the future and what our ancestors died and fought for and what will you stand for. And Darrow is really sensing that he's getting to them. There's this sort of patriotic idealist streak in what he's saying that is appealing to these guys. And so he says out loud, I will give you the sons of Ares. And I will tell you what, kids, I was shook. Romulus asks, what do you mean? And I was like, yeah, thank you. I also would like to ask that very question. And Darrow says there are over 350 Sons of Ares cells throughout your territories. We are your dock strikes, sanitation sabotages, the reason why Nessus streets fill with shit. Even if you hand me over to the Sovereign today, the Sons will bleed you for 1,000 years. But I will give you every single Son of Ares cell in the Rim. I will abandon the low colors here and take my crusade to the core, never coming through the asteroid belt as long as I live, if you help me kill this bloody damn fleet. I stab a finger at Roke, who looks horrified. He's lying. Lords, I reply, the Imperator is asking you to bow. Aren't you tired of that? Of groveling to a throne 6 million kilometers from your home? The Sovereign says I'm a threat, but who's bombed your cities, slain millions of your people? Was it me? No. The burners of Rhea. That was a different time, Roke protests. It was the same woman, I snarl. Who burned Rhea? The Sovereign's forgotten, because her throne sits with its back toward the Rim. But you see her glassy corpse every night in your skies. Rhea was a mistake that must never be repeated. And this is when they unveil their killer blow. So what they've done is they have taken the information that Cassius gave them about what is likely going on with Adrius, and how he is likely stockpiling nuclear devices. And they are framing it as if it is the Sovereign doing this, because she is planning to annihilate planets that don't fall into line. It's actually kind of genius, because while it's technically Adrius doing this, and he has thought he was doing this on the sly, but apparently, the Sovereign got wind, even if it's Adrius doing it and not her, I have no doubt that were she to defeat Adrius in a way that could get her those supplies, she would be doing what he's claiming she's doing. She absolutely, this is not beneath her at all. So I personally feel like this is barely even a lie. It's just rearranging the order of things and the events in which they would happen. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, and the way that they do this is, I love Mustang, is literally here, let me check my email. And then when they hesitate, she's like, turn the Wi-Fi off on it if you're afraid of that. Here's my password. She lets them sign into her data pad for her. And Roke, for his part, because all of this information about Adrius and his secret embezzlement of funds and nuclear arms has been kept so secret that the Sovereign even is aware that Adrius is doing this. Roke doesn't know about it. So because she didn't tell Roke about this major suspicion and the evidence that has been gathered about it, this whole argument comes out of complete left field for him, and he didn't see it coming at all and has no answer to explain what it is they're showing the Moon Lords in this footage, because there's, men who have these Geiger counters and they're going way above what they should for radiation for the type of nuclear warheads that would be allowed in space combat. And Roke is saying, we didn't visit the depot, but Romulus says, so there is a depot. And Roke is like, oh shit. Roke blurted this out without thinking through what that was going to sound like. And so Romulus pushes it. Imperator Fabii, why would there be a secret depot of nuclear weapons between here and Luna? And Roke is trying to say it's security and yada, yada, yada. And he's like, it would be near a base if it was for security. This looks like it's on the way to my place. You've set up a little bodega in case somebody decides to commit genocide, and you could just scoop up a little something on the way. Do you really think I'm this fucking stupid that I don't see what's happening here? And when Roke continues to argue, and he's like, okay, so this is a lie, but this isn't a lie, but this is a lie. And finally, there comes a point that I wasn't expecting, and I was wondering how much this had been bothering Romulus. And I feel like it's the sort of thing that if the deal had been good enough, he would have overlooked it. But because things have gone the way they have, he brings it up here because he figures he can. Roke says, on my honor, and he says the same honor you had when you betrayed your friend, when you betrayed Honorable Lorne, my ally Augustus, my father Rivas, that honor by which you watched as my daughter's head was stomped in by a sociopathic matricide who takes orders from a sociopathic patricide? I was so shook by the fact that he was just throwing all of that in Roke's face after this whole conversation and entertaining it to the level that he did. And it's so funny because I feel like there's two people living inside this guy. And one of them is the ultra practical, cynical, gotta do what gotta be done. And then there is the guy who's the Ned Stark that he wishes that he got to be more often, but can't afford to be. And this is him letting that side of him out where he's like, you know what? I fucking knew you weren't shit. I've been thinking it. We were gonna make a deal because I thought at least this would be real. But now that I think about it, why should I think anything from you is real? Because you are full of shit and turn your back on everybody all the fucking time. And I love it. I love it. And finally, he spits blood in Roke's face and says this is a blood feud. And I was like, oh shit, because the last time we saw this was Cassius. And my goodness. It's just so much more dramatic than I was expecting. And how disgusted Romulus is with Roke and with his whole like generation and the way they're handling things. I feel like just the ideals that he holds, he would be willing to compromise those ideals if he has to. But he's seeing Darrow here as somebody he says, he came here with his heart on his sleeve. And I was sort of like, did he? I don't know. I think he has, but I was surprised to hear him say that's how he interpreted Darrow. You came with your lies, hiding behind manners and breeding. So then Roke makes a speech that is actually pretty chilling. And is like, look, I don't want to do this, but I know what the fuck I'm doing. You guys don't have any commander that is going to come close to me. And I will absolutely obliterate you all and erase the memory of you and erase any possibility of anyone you know ever having children and being able to carry on your memory. You will be eliminated from the universe. And I don't want to, but I can and I will. And I don't feel bad about that. So you better make your choice. And this is when he does the blood feud. And at first, Darrow and Mustang are both like, dude, are you just letting him leave? Like, you can't. He's so dangerous. Hold him as a hostage for a while. And Romulus is like, the fuck I will. I told him safe passage, and safe passage is what he shall have. He's a guest. So, no. If we had started things from a different point of view and set that up, then fine. But I'm not going to be, like, turning my back on the shit I believe when that was what I just threw in his face. And then Roke, he recites to them, because he is top-tier drama. Brothers, sisters, till the last, woe that this has come to pass. By your grave I shall weep, for it was I who made you sleep. And then he leaves and says, I will see you shortly. And there's something about that line that's very, like, ominous. I really like it. So finally, Darrow follows and says, when did I lose you? When Quinn died, he says. You planned to kill me even when you thought I was a gold? Gold, red, it doesn't matter. Your spirit is black. Quinn was good. Leah was good. And you used them. You are ruin, Darrow. You drain your friends of life and leave them spent and wasted in your wake, convincing yourself each death is worth it. Each death brings you closer to justice. But history is littered with men like you. This society is not without fault, but the hierarchy, this world, it is the best men can afford. And it's your right to decide that? Yes, it is. But beat me in space and it will be yours. And that is the end of chapter 42. And that was a hell of an ending of that chapter. The thing with Roke, it's like, you're the commander of an opposing fleet. You're doing the same thing. Except with less principle behind it, actually. It's just what Roke is accusing Darrow of, he is participating in. And behaving as if, well, none of this would be happening if it weren't for Darrow. When Darrow is one figure in a huge movement that was already going on. So it's just all very illogical. But Roke is being a whiny bitch about losing people he cared about and wants somebody to blame. And Darrow is perfect. And for me, that's weak sauce, Roke. But, you know, you do you, I guess. All right, everybody, I am going to wrap this one up, but thank you again so much for hanging out with me, for listening. Thank you to Ashley for commissioning this one, and appreciate flexibility in rescheduling it. I am enjoying this book so much, and let me look and see when the next episode is, because I hope I don't have to wait that long. Oh God, you guys, it's not until June 25th. Oh my God, it's almost a month away. Oh, after that, it picks up and is pretty steady. But like, oh, that's tough. That's really going to hurt. What can you do? All right, everybody. I will see you in a month. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.